Hi everyone, welcome back. Yes, it is a Velvet Lounge Life, and I am so glad you're here. And we are going to finish up going through the buttons I decided to keep from that giant hoard of probably hundreds of thousands, but at least 100,000, probably more buttons. And I thank the person who wanted to remain nameless for suggesting that I do this video, because she said it would give her more of an understanding of what she should keep and how, just give her ideas on how to whittle down her own collection. I will say that those buttons that I sorted through were not from my personal collection. They were, but I consider the buttons I collect the ones to be that I sort out, that are in particular storage containers that, I plan on keeping and using for hopefully decades to come. The other buttons that I have are those that I either haven't sorted through yet, or that I acquired but never had a chance to sort through ever. And so that's why I'm saying sorted through yet, whether they be purchased, gifted to me, etc. And then there are those that I put to the side after doing a very quick sort of buttons that, I decided to keep. And I just never revisited them one more time before finding new homes for them. So there's various reasons why someone might have a ridiculous number of buttons. Of course, there's the classic folks that might be hoarding buttons for decades, and hey, they like buttons. At least it's a small thing. It's not like they're collecting coconuts or something that's a lot larger. And so I'll show you, hopefully by the end of this video, what I decided to give away. I'm just going to show you one general picture. I'm not going to go through and show you each and every item, because that would be an entire series of videos within itself. And also, you saw me do an initial sort. And as I said in the first video that I went through about the buttons I decided to keep, before I made those two videos sorting through the buttons initially, I had already sorted some out that that's why you'll see some in here that you didn't see in those videos. And then after I completed those first two videos sorting through them initially, I continued sorting more buttons that I had afterwards that you guys didn't see me sort through. So it's a whole thing. And the reason I'm giving you all this information is I have a list of questions and such that people had. And I really appreciate the fact that you guys took the moment to leave a comment and or question or an emoji. It really helps me to know that people care about the subject matter. And I hate to say this, but it also helps YouTube know that people care about the subject matter, and it doesn't get blocked out and put into the pasture for permanent retirement. So please share, comment, and or just say hi. It's a good thing. It helps. So I'm going to continue answering some of the many questions that I've had over time, and some that were from those initial sorting videos. Verdigris, that was a question someone had. They heard me use the word, they did not understand what it was, and so I'm just going to talk about it as I show you guys some of the buttons I decided to keep. This is a gorgeous one. It's from the 1980s, and it's made of like that plastic that they covered with this metal product. And then this one, as you can see, they added these cabochons, which are glued in. If they were a cloth set, this would be all metal, and that would be a whole different program, and I would be so incredibly happy. But it is what it is. You could tell it's a newer button because it still has this little black thing on the back of it, and so this has never been used, and it's gorgeous. And this is perfect for a collection, especially if you have a collection like mine, where I try to collect a little bit of everything for historical sake. And my hope is that, our daughter is not going to keep all of these buttons, but we are going to be making a visit to the Waterbury Button Museum here in Connecticut, where I live on the Upper East Coast. And I'm going to ask them about, are you guys ever looking for items to add to your collection? They may not be, because they probably obviously deal in Waterbury Button Company buttons, but there are, other organizations who might be interested in adopting these in the future when I'm no longer here. So yeah, that would be awesome. So I try to keep the better ones, sort things by category of what they are, especially materials. This is a plastic button. It is from the 1960s, two-hole button, as you can see. And so in the 1960s, folks really were getting into their plastics, and look at how molded and designed this is. So whereas today, it would be almost impossible to find something so neat. And I have a button or two like this in my collection already. And in this big bunch that I went through, there was another one. And I don't know, it's like a phoenix or something. And this is another one that I have some version of. I think the other one that I have is a ruby center. This one is it's definitely black. It's a black, almost like midnight black center. And you can see it's cradled in, crimped to hold it in place. This brass backing, and obviously the shank is part of that whole system. And nope, I thought this had words on it, but it does not. I notice I don't have like an extraordinary, I do have some, and probably more than enough, buttons that have wording on them. Waterbury Button Company's buttons I have thousands of, so not counting those. But I know someone asked me, and I'll get back to Verdigris in a minute, an excellent question is, why do I not collect fly buttons, like Levi buttons, Wrangler buttons, the buttons that are flat metal, they're usually on jeans, or they used to be, work shirts, that type of thing. I don't know. I just don't. I don't know. Obviously, as you can see from the aesthetic, a lot of what I'm collecting are, decorative items, colorful items, etc. So no reason in particular. Maybe it's something I will probably get a little collection together of, or at least one complete tray filled with fly buttons at some point. That might be my next point of call, because as I'm trying to, create small collections of various types of buttons made of various types of materials, that is definitely a button that should be, or style of button that should be included, because nothing says Americana more than a fly button. If you guys remember, I was so happy and shocked to find these horseshoe buttons, and these are actually Waterbury Button Company buttons. After my research, I was able to discover that. I believe that these were made for Colt, C-O-L-T, Colt Manufacturing, which is also a company that originated and still exists at some form or function in the state of Connecticut as well. So it would make sense. I don't know why I didn't put two and two together initially, but that's why you do your research. So these are Colt Manufacturing, logoed, if you will, without the words on it, buttons. These are small, because that was my other thing, is why don't they say the word Colt on them with the horseshoe, or at least where's the horse? But Colt had various variations that they used of their moniker, logo, whatever. And if you can see, these are, this is a bad comparison, but these are small buttons. So you only have so much room to put so much information on these buttons, and nothing says Colt like a horseshoe. And the other thing about these buttons is, and I think, yeah, I think you could tell by looking at this one right here. I don't know what the over metal is. Usually one of the metals that the Waterbury button company would use is nickel. And sometimes buttons were made of solid nickel. And sometimes they were nickel plated over something else. And I can see underneath, and I don't know if the camera is picking this up, but especially with this button, you can see where the wear is right here. And it looks as if it's over maybe a brass or a copper. So one button can tell you so much if you're willing to, you know, dig a little bit deeper. And I dug and I found out something I'd never intended to find out, to be honest. That was one I would not have guessed, but I did wonder about that horseshoe because such an unusual design to be on a button. I'm just going to pick up a bunch of these mother of pearl buttons. The ones that, you know, these others in my hand, pretty insignificant, but great for, like I said, other uses. And this one is the most interesting because it's very small, but look at how large the 4 holes are of that button. And also, it's, to be what it is, it's a pretty thick button also. So that's why that one made it in, and that's why the others made it in. Now back to verdigris. So verdigris is a disease of the metal. So any type of metal, whether it be jewelry, pulls on a chest of drawers, a mirror, obviously what we're dealing with today, buttons, and the list goes on. Tools can even have verdigris on them. Verdigris happens when moisture is introduced to the metal. So sometimes metals will rust, and sometimes metals, especially if they're enclosed in something like a plastic container, something airtight-ish, like a plastic container or something, they will end up getting this disease that is called verdigris. And it's usually a greenish looking substance that forms on the button. So here is an excellent example, this beautiful twinkler, or we love to call them mirror back buttons when I was a child, because it looks like a mirror in the back, but if you do this to them, it looks like they're twinkling. So the industry name, I guess we'll say, is twinkler. But you can see that the verdigris on this button is pretty bad. Like, look at it. It's there. It's here. You also have rust that was introduced. That's unfortunately all due to moisture damage. And these buttons being enclosed in a container for decades. In some cases, some like that one, well over 100 years. So that disease can spread to your other metal buttons. And in some cases with natural buttons such as wood, leather, pearl, etc., or mother of pearl, it can also cause them to break down as well. And you have to sequester those away from all of your other buttons, even plastics. Because what it'll do is, if you have a shiny plastic, for example, like this delicious orange button, it will start to dull in the presence of that button. So it happens over time, so don't panic. If right now you're like, oh my God, I have some of that in my collection, simply go later on today or tomorrow, take them away, take them out of your other, away from your other buttons. And unfortunately, 90% of the time, those buttons are not savable. They're just going to continue to break down over time. So you can recycle them, or if you encase the verdigris and the entire button and something like a resin, and it's easy to find resin kits now. They're not just for commercial folks. So you can get, like I have this epoxy resin here that dries crystal clear. That's part of the key. Then you will be able to encapsulate that entire button and use it in other projects, for your art or crafting or whatever it is. And also, you don't want that near your skin, of course. So once it's encapsulated in something that's safe and it's cured properly, then it's now a reusable item again. And the reason I say that is something like that button I have from the 1800s, and I have several of those. Unfortunately, several of them have the disease. What I am going to do is end up using them a different way in a different project. So it's, you can decide whether recycling them or reusing them is an option, but the number one thing is to get them away from your other buttons. So hopefully that overly descriptive answer helps you. And I understand, because if you don't know, you don't know. And I had to learn all of this myself. And this is such a beautiful Art Nouveau style button. I love the shape of it. It's not exactly round. It's in absolute perfect condition. And this will be just amazing as part of the collection. And let's see what else. Let me pick these up quickly, because there's, 3 of them? Yep, 3. And these are from the 1970s. And just look at them. They probably were on a coat. And just so they're made of metal, so well made, solid as a rock. Love the design that's on the edge or around the perimeter, and the inside is like a moon glow button. You haven't heard me talk about moon glows a lot, but I do have a collection of moon glows, and this is such a cool way to set off a moon glow, and it just takes it to the next level. And if we did a little more research, we probably can find out who made these buttons, because they have some very specific characteristics, such as the notching here on the left and the right. The shape of the shank has like that 8-hour figure, like a figural sort of like, here is the waist, here is the bodice, here is, the bottom. And they just seem so very specific. But like I said, I haven't researched anything in deep, dark detail yet. Here is a button that's also from one of my favorite categories, which I just spoke about a little bit earlier. Twinkler mirror backs. Like I said, we as kids used to call these mirror backs. And here, they're actually in the books called twinklers, because it has that mirror type of background through the piercing. And of course, most of these are highly decorative, like this one is. This one has some flora and fauna, and you can see this applied shank back here. Just stunning. And let's pick up a couple at a time. These are Tagua nut buttons. Tagua nut, I did an entire video on that button category. It's so important that you learn about it, because there are some stunning buttons that people are tossing out or not tossing out, but they're moving on, that they might want in their collection. And Tagua nut is one of them. It's a vegetable ivory material, and it's literally, they're made from an actual nut. Now, with a Tagua nut, they made figurines, they made little components, obviously buttons, as we're seeing, and different findings, jewelry, bits and bobs. And buttons ended up being one of their big categories. These are Tagua nut is a tropical nut. So it's from a tropical country. and or countries. There's several countries that produce them, and they're still produced today. And also, you can eat the nut, but you cannot eat the buttons. So just to let you know that they are not edible. But they came in different colors, and all the colors would have been naturalistic colors, except for when they were dyed by humans. So there is no such thing as a natural pink Tagua nut button, but there's a such thing as a Tagua nut dyed pink button. So, and the list goes on and on. Most of these have either their own shank, such as, you know, an applied shank or self shank, or they had holes. So you don't find them really that often with a metal shank added to the back, for example. And then let me just show you a handful of buttons I decided to keep. This one we'll talk about because that is a cult button. So there's some military buttons here. There's just an array of interesting metal buttons. And, oh, this one is really cool too. So we'll talk about that one. That's miniature. You know, the horse. Well, I'll put the horse in there because we talked about that already. So here, this is just a handful of other metal buttons I decided to keep for a variety of reasons. As you can tell, some of these are portrait buttons, like the horse, the guy leaning on the cactus, this Art Nouveau button right here. This one is very 1970s, 1980s in style. I believe this is 1980s. This one. As well as there's some military ones in there and other associations that I am not familiar with that I would have to research. Have another pearl button. And just getting this ready for the thumbnail when I make it. Here is another, I need to find out what the official name is for buttons that are made like this. But it's a plastic button that's covered in this metallic substance. It's not just colored on or painted or sprayed on. It's actually meant to mimic metal, but it's definitely not metal. You could tell by the weight, and you can also just tell by the way it's made. Usually, not always, you might see a molding mark. As you can see with this one, there is no molding mark. One of the other telltales, though, is the fact that this middle decorative cabochon piece is actually made of plastic, and the shank to that front white piece actually goes all the way through the back. That's completely made of plastic. And also, once again, the weight of this gives it away instantly. But it's a pretty button, and I'm pretty sure I'll have plenty of uses for it. So here we have a navel buttons, another metal button. This one is, yeah. So we'll look at this one more closely right here because it has north, south, east, and west on it. So what a wonderful portrait button that is. And the other two, I mean, just look at them. I don't need to say any more as to why I decided to keep those. And then, oh, we have this one, which let me make sure I'm holding it the right way. I need to do more research on. I feel as if this is a United Kingdom or a button from across the pond. And it also has this helmet shape to it, as you can see, with that dome and then the flat rim. And this is what the back of it looks like, so you know this was meant for heavy duty usage. And there's a lot of like teeny tiny wording on it, like in the very, very center, and some initials. And of course, this design is just very evocative of something. So I have to look that up and figure out, you know, what it is, what the history is of it. So here is another one to look at before the camera decides to kick us out. And this is definitely your 1960s maybe even early 1970s, mid-century modern button. It has that little atomic hint in the center. Obviously, they did a lot with this sort of adding metal to the top of lucite plastics at that time. And of course, one of my favorite shank styles is on the back. Sorry, I thought someone was bothering me. And yeah, I just love this button, and also the complexity of how it was made. The shank is pushed down through the center. The little star or sun, maybe someone will call it that, in the center is another piece. And then you have the big metal shield back there. And then you have the lucite piece. The shank comes through, it's twisted so that obviously it'll hold and you can sew through it. This was made to be an inexpensive button back then. And imagine like the fact that no one is going to make this button nowadays unless they charged you an arm and maybe 2.5 legs for it. So we have some more buttons in here. I thought I was going to finish all this in one video, but I think we're going to have one more video, you guys. And then finally, I will show you the buttons that I decided to give away. But thank you all for being here, and please remember to subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions, please leave them below. I hope you're enjoying the series. Enjoy your day.